50 years ago, somebody sat down and named a machine personal. Home computer never stuck as a name. Desktop computer never stuck either. Personal did. And that word was a promise, one the technology couldn't actually keep for most of the last 5 decades. That changes now. Here's what that promise actually was and why it's finally coming due. Whoever coined that phrase wasn't being modest about it. They picked a word implying the machine would bend around whoever sat down at it, not the other way around. That's a specific claim, not a vague one. And for most of the decades since, the hardware and the software underneath it simply weren't capable of delivering on it. No one was lying when they chose that name. They were describing an ambition that technology hadn't earned yet. Look at any office from that era, and you'd find the same handful of programs running on every single desk, laid out identically no matter who was sitting there. Someone crunching numbers and someone laying out a magazine spread got the same toolbar, the same set of menus, defaults neither of them chose. Owning the box never meant owning how it behaved. That part stayed with whoever designed it for everyone at once, which in practice meant it was designed for no one in particular. So people built their own private systems around it. A folder structure nobody else would recognize, a specific sequence of clicks that dodged some annoying quirk nobody ever bothered fixing. None of that got taught anywhere. It just piled up one small accommodation at a time until working around software stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like the price of admission. The tool held its shape. You kept bending to fit it. The one place software would negotiate with you was decoration. A different accent color, a background image swapped out, icons dragged into whatever order made sense to you. That was the entire deal, and it never touched how the thing actually functioned underneath. You were allowed to redecorate. You were never handed the blueprint. That's a real distinction. And for 50 years, software only ever offered you the first half of it. Even the word we used gave it away. We called it customizing, not building. You were decorating a house and you had no say in the floor plan. Picture two completely different jobs. One person keeping tabs on clients, shoots, and getting invoices out the door. Another juggling lesson plans, a stack of grading, and logistics for a field trip. Nothing about those 2 days resembles the other. Historically, though, both of them would land on the identical piece of software, clicking through an identical sequence in an identical order just to get through their very own different day. The mirror gives back an identical reflection of whoever's looking into it. For most of computing history, that's a fair way to describe what software did as well. It didn't matter what you actually needed or how your mind happened to work. Everyone got handed the identical experience, and making that experience fit your actual life was entirely your job to figure out. And a mirror is a fine thing to own. It's just a strange thing to have been sold as personal for half a century. So here's the actual shift. For the first time, the underlying mechanics, not just the surface decoration, can be reshaped around what one particular person actually does all day and the exact problem they're wrestling with. That is a fundamentally different kind of change than a new feature or a version bump. An update changes what a tool looks like. This changes who it was actually built for in the first place. Those two things have been getting confused for 50 years, and they're not the same conversation at all. AI can rebuild how a tool actually functions around habits you already have. instead of handing you a system built for a stranger and expecting you to translate your own workflow into its language. Say someone organizes their work by client instead of by date, because that's generally how their brain sorts things. Nearly every piece of software they've ever touched has quietly fought them on that, sorting by date regardless and forcing them to dig. A tool built specifically around them stops fighting and sorts things the way they actually think. The tool adjusts. You don't have to. It used to be a safe bet. If a need was common enough, everyone chasing it ended up on the same piece of software, following the same path through it, no matter how different their actual circumstances were underneath it. That bet doesn't pay off anymore. Two people can hand AI the identical problem and walk away with two builds that share almost nothing in common, because fitting each of them individually was the entire point, not an accident. And none of this was ever really about which colors a tool used. What's actually different now sits underneath the surface in the mechanics themselves, reshaped around whatever this particular person actually needs to get done. How the tool behaves, what order it works in, how it handles the one particular problem you brought it. That's the part that's finally up for negotiation. And for 50 years, it flatly wasn't. Think of the difference between repainting a car and rebuilding the engine. One changes how it feels to sit inside. The other changes how it actually runs. Let's call the first 50 years Act 1. Everyone got handed an identical machine and told it was theirs, personally. The hardware really did belong to you. Everything running on top of it belonged to everybody at once. Act 2 looks nothing like that. A machine that genuinely changes shape depending on whose hands it lands in. Nobody's redefining the word here. The definition was correct from day one. The technology just spent 50 years catching up to it. The name was never the problem. It just took 50 years for the computer half of that phrase to catch up to the personal half. The promise showed up on day one. The technology only just became capable of actually delivering it. So, what does this mean for you? Well, the next time you catch yourself adjusting to a piece of software instead of the other way around, pay attention to that moment. It isn't just how things are, it's a habit built out of 50 years of software that genuinely had no other option to offer you. That's the exact same instinct that used to have you memorizing settings and quietly engineering your own workarounds, never once calling it a compromise because there was nothing to compare it to. There's something to compare it to now. The rest of this series shows you exactly what that looks like, one build at a time. Subscribe if you want to see what building around one specific person actually looks like, because that's what's going to be coming up in this series. And if you want to poke around in the meantime, eauclairai.com has more resources. Reach out to us if you'd like to chat. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.